Hi everybody. I just want to go through a couple of the questions from the quiz so that you've got a chance to practice them on your own over the weekend, but you'll have a resource to look over how to get to the correct answers. We'll also be sending you a copy of the full answer key, but I'm going to go through a couple of the questions with you right now. So let's just start with the very first one. When we multiply, we add the exponents, and 3 plus -5 gives x to the -2. But that's not a final answer because x to the -2 wants to be in a different position, and so it becomes 1 over x squared. Something similar would happen for number 3 here. 7 to the 12th divided by 7 to the 14. Division, we subtract. 12 minus 14 would give 7 to the -2. And then again, -2 doesn't want to be where it is, so it goes to the bottom, and 7 squared is 49. Notice that a negative exponent does not create a negative number, simply a smaller one by creating a fraction. If I look over here to number 2, let's pull this into view a bit better. Remember that we're numbers with numbers and letters with letters. The -3 and the -2 here only apply to the x's. They're not attached to the 4 and the 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. X to the -3 would rather be in a new position on the bottom, as would the -2. Therefore, we end up with 3 of them on the bottom and 2 of them on the bottom, which works out to 12 over x to the 5th. The next one down. Again, numbers with numbers, letters with letters. 42 divided by 2 is 21. These 8 x's on the bottom are not happy. They'd rather go to the top. These 5 would rather go to the bottom. And so I'll end up with x to the 8 over x to the 5. And when I pair them up, 5 of them pair up to create 1s, leaving 3 remaining x's on the top. And so it is 21x cubed. Let's take a look at number 6 here. 4 copies. Remember that that means ghost brackets. There are 4 copies of everything in the brackets, so there will be 4 2's. And so 2 to the 4 is 16. There's also 4 copies of 3 unhappy x's. That gives us 12 unhappy x's. The rule is copies of copies, we multiply. 16x to the -12 is the same as 16, doesn't need to move anywhere, over top of x to the 12. This part wants to move because of the negative exponent. If I move over to this one here, number 7, x cubed, y to the -2. Inside the brackets, I could rewrite that as x y squared. The y is not happy on the bottom, so it comes up to the top and joins the x. There's no need to move the x anywhere. It's quite happy where it is. It stays put. The 3 is still on the outside. Now that I've done the brackets, Exponents says there's 3 copies of everything in the brackets, and that gives me x cubed y 6. Moving over to number 8, I have 4 copies of everything in the brackets. The x is unhappy, the y is unhappy. They both switch positions. So that gives me y cubed on top and x squared on the bottom to the power of 4. 4 copies of those gives y to the 12. 4 copies of x squared gives me x to the power 8. Let's take a look at some of the harder ones here now. We always follow bedmass, and bedmass is brackets first. Inside the brackets, there's some work I can do here to make this simpler. 20 divided by 10 is a 2. And then x squared, x squared on top, x on the bottom, that just gives me x to the 1. Y cubed on the top, y to the 5 on the bottom, is going to leave me with 2 copies of y on the bottom. Z, there's no other z, so it stays by itself. All I've done so far is simplify the brackets. Now, cubing everything within the brackets, because again, if you want to use ghost brackets, there's 3 copies of the 2. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 3 copies of the x gives x cubed. 3 copies of the z gives z cubed. And on the bottom, 3 copies of the y squared gives y to the 6th. If I move over to number 10, there's nothing in the brackets that I need to deal with. There's only a single x, a single y, and a 5, similar with the numbers, the x's and y's here. So now I'll deal with the exponents. This -2 out here says that the entire bracket is not happy in this position. It wants to move, and so I'm going to move the entire bracket down. Now notice I'm not changing anything within the bracket. It's still x to the -3, and it's still y. And now that it's on the bottom where it wants to be, it will be positively squared. I'll cross it out there. And now let's apply the exponent. 2 copies of the 5, move that over for you, gives 25. 2 copies of 2 unhappy x's gives 4 unhappy x's. And 2 copies of y cubed gives y to the 6. On the bottom, 2 copies of 10. 10 times 10 is 100. 3 unhappy x's, 2 copies of them gives 6 unhappy x's, and y squared. Almost done. Numbers with numbers, letters with letters. 25 over 100 reduces down to 1/4. 6 unhappy x's go up top, 4 unhappy x's come down, and that will leave me with a grand total of 2 x's on the top. 6 y's on the top, 2 on the bottom. 2 of them will pair up, leaving 4 y's by itself, x squared y fourth over 4. You could also write that as x squared y to the 4th over 4. All right, let's take a look at the last 2 here. Numbers with numbers. 30 over 20 reduces down to 3/2. X to the 0 is just 1, leaving me with a single y on top. I have a single x on the bottom. Y to the 0 is equal to 1, so I don't need to write it, and that is my answer. The last one for number 12. I have a negative exponent, which means the entire thing is going to flip over, but I'm going to do that afterwards. First, let's go inside the brackets and deal with everything. 4 over 8 gives me 1/2. 2 unhappy x's on top, 3 unhappy x's on the bottom. The 3 copies move up, the 2 copies move down, and that's going to leave me with 1 single x on the top. I can also do that by the laws which say that -2 divided by, or let's subtract the exponent -3. -2 minus -3 does give me a 1. Similarly, 6 unhappy copies go to the bottom, 3 go to the top, and that leaves me with y cubed on the bottom. With the z's, this z on the bottom is perfectly happy to stay there. This one on the top does not want to be there. It's going to go down and join the other one, and so now I have z squared on the bottom. This is all in the brackets, and it is still all to the power of -2. Once I've completed the brackets, we go to exponents. -2 means I'm going to flip it over and square everything. So the 2 is going to go up top and get squared to become 4. Y cubed goes up top and gets squared to become y to the 6. Z squared goes up top and is squared to become z to the 4. The x goes to the bottom, gets squared, and becomes x squared. I hope this helps, and good luck with all the practice on the practice test and going back through the various chapters, completing any questions you hadn't done, and we will have the test next week.